Hello and welcome again once more to this Facebook Live on BBC News from Bangladesh. My name is Sanjay Majumdar and I've been here for a week and I'm here to give you the latest on the Rohingya crisis. Now, do remember to send us your comments, send us your questions. I'll do my best to answer as many as I can. I'm very close to the border between Myanmar and Bangladesh, on the Bangladesh side. And if you look behind me, all along the highway, these are Rohingya Muslim refugees who've been arriving in Bangladesh. We've had a huge spike in the numbers coming in overnight. In the past 24 hours, 18,000 refugees have arrived in Bangladesh. Now, most of the refugee camps are overflowing, because of which many of them are just seated here by the side of the road with barely any protection. As you can see, there are children there are lots of women. The truck over there is one of several trucks we've seen carrying aid and relief materials to the Rohingya refugees. They've been distributing clothes, water and food. We're just going to cross the road over to the other side. Now, the conditions in which the Rohingyas are living are extremely difficult. If you come this way, you can see the temporary shelters that they've built for themselves. Nothing more than pieces of tarpaulin stretched and basically propped up by bamboos. An entire family sheltering inside. It's been raining overnight, so have a look at the ground here. It's completely muddy. Now, the Bangladesh government says it's completely overwhelmed by the Rohingya refugee crisis. That's why it's asking for international help, and it's also asking for Myanmar to take these people back. Okay, so do remember to send us in your questions. I have one here from Ripon. He's asking, where's India? They didn't help them. This is a question we've been hearing quite a bit about who's supporting the refugees and who's not. A lot of support pouring in, as you'd expect, from Muslim countries. Turkey's taken the lead. Yesterday, the Turkish First Lady and Foreign Minister were here. They were here to pledge their support. Just over here you can see aid being distributed now. Just peeling off to show you this one. These are local volunteers handing out bottles of water. Many of these people have been walking for days to get here. They're dehydrated, they're malnourished. A simple bottle of water goes a long way. But the biggest question, of course, is how is the international community going to help Bangladesh support this? India is one of the countries that has appeared to have turned its back on the Rohingya refugees. But there are other countries, Malaysia, Indonesia, who have pledged support. But Bangladesh says it needs a lot more. Question from Majid: what is the condition of people and their views? Well, just look around you. I will ask a question to them. আপনারা খুব দূর থেকে এসেছেন, কি অবস্থা আছে এখন? আপনাদের কি দরকার?
হুকুমতে ম্যালেকটেরিয়া বেশি গরফরাদি ফেলার আরারে গুলি মারে নুরাইদের যাইতে হয়।
প্রয়োজন কি? So he's just told me that the reason he's here is because his village was attacked. There was a lot of firing. His house was set on fire. They don't have a home anymore. আপনার কি দরকার এখানে? কি প্রয়োজন? আমার হ্যাঁ বাসস্থান দরকার থাকে। They're saying
আর ঘর বাড়ি নাই এখন।
This man is saying we don't have any homes, we don't have anywhere to live. Now that's a delegation from the UN just going past. There are a number of international aid agencies here as well. The UN, the humanitarian agency, Doctors Without Borders, World Food Programme, all of them are on the ground, but they're all very, very concerned. They say that the numbers are overwhelming and People here need food and water, but they also need urgent medical help. As you heard from the gentleman back there, their villages were attacked. They were fired upon. I've met in the past few days people with the most horrific injuries, gunshot wounds, burns, deep cuts. And there are only a few field hospitals catering to their need. Now let me bring you in here. There was a question from Majid on what is the condition these people are living in. It's been raining overnight. It's extremely muddy. If you look down there, you can see how muddy it is. And just look inside and see how they're living. This is a family of 3. They have little children with them, sleeping on the ground. When it rains, they're not really very protected. And this is a big concern now for the aid agencies. The threat of disease spreading among these people. I've got a question here from Deepavali. Could you give us a background in this crisis? Well, the Rohingyas are ethnic Muslims from Myanmar, from Myanmar's Rakhine state, that's west of Myanmar, in what is effectively a Buddhist majority country. They don't have citizenship of Myanmar because people there do not believe they belong to that country. And over the past 2 weeks, we've seen a massive spike in violence. It started on the 25th of August with an attack blamed on an attack by Rohingya militants on several police posts and army base, and there's been a massive retaliation allegedly by the Myanmar military forces. As you heard testimony there, villages being set on fire, people driven out. Now, I've got a question here about how does one person help, and this is really the question that people here in Bangladesh are confronting. What is it that they can do? We now know from the UN that over 250,000 Rohingyas have crossed the border into Bangladesh. We believe there are several thousand others waiting to come in. There's no reasonable estimate. I do want to apologize here for our poor connection issues. We are coming to you from a very remote area from the Myanmar-Bangladesh border. We do apologize, but we're hoping to bring you these images of a terrible crisis and under very difficult circumstances. You're watching this Facebook Live from BBC News. You're watching a Rohingya refugee who's come just a short while ago, a few days ago. This is her little child, 2 of them in here in this tent with a pot of food cooking in the background. Now, the pressing need for a lot of these people, immediate need, is to find food and medical aid. But there is a long-term issue as well. They need to find out where they can be rehabilitated, where they can live. I'm getting a lot of your comments, a lot of you very upset as we are bringing you this story. Mandy, you say it makes my heart break to see these poor people. It is a very, very tragic situation. What is really heartbreaking, Mandy, is that there are so many children here. In the past 7 days that I've been here in Bangladesh, I've seen so many little children who've been brought here in the most difficult circumstances, many of them with no clothes to wear. Some of them are sick, and they don't understand why they're here. This is a crisis which is much bigger than they are. It's very difficult for them to comprehend why they've been uprooted from their homeland, from their homes, had to travel these long distances and live in these, frankly, appalling conditions. I've got another question that I'm going to read out, and please do send in your questions and comments. I'll do my best to answer them. I do apologize for the connectivity. We are doing our best to bring you this from the border of Myanmar and Bangladesh. Keela, you're asking, what steps are the international community taking, or are they willing to take, to stop the genocide, and what will happen to the perpetrators? Keela, a lot of pressure is being put on the Myanmar government, especially its de facto leader Aung San Suu Kyi. She is a Nobel Peace Prize laureate. A lot of criticism for her from across the world. There's an online campaign asking the Nobel Committee to strip her of a Peace Prize. Yesterday in Washington, a bipartisan group of US senators joined a chorus of people from around the world condemning the violence and asking Aung San Suu Kyi to do something to stop it. A lot of criticism that she has not, up until now, remarked or said anything specific, apart from saying that there are 2 sides to this, that a lot of what we are showing you, or what is being shown from Rakhine State, which is where access is restricted, is fake news. and therefore, she thinks the Myanmar government's position is this is orchestrated by Rohingya militants. Thank you, Heather, for your comment. You're saying that there's very little coverage in the US, and thank you for the BBC for covering this. You're asking for donations. Thank you for your comments, Heather. We'll do our best to continue providing you this coverage. We have a lot of coverage on the ground, a lot of reporters trying to cover this from every angle, including a reporter who's just back from Rakhine State in Myanmar. He witnessed yesterday a Muslim village being burnt. And he says that the people who were burning it were young Buddhist youths, young Rakhine youths. You've asked about donations. Like I said, there are a number of international aid agencies here. The UN agencies, UNHCR, World Food Programme, MSF. These are people you can contact if you would like to contribute, if you would like to help to these people. Thank you once again for all your support. But yes, these are the people who need everyone's support. They've been uprooted from what is their home. We're about 30-40 kilometers from where their homes are across the border in Myanmar, and they've had to make this journey across by walking across mountains, through jungles. Some of them have come by boat. And you can just have a look at the situation. Look at this young boy here. His feet are covered in mud because he's having to live out here in the open with no protection. It's been raining. This is the monsoon season. They have very little food to eat. There's a boy here who has a loaf of bread, but they really urgently need assistance. Most of all, some kind of shelter where they will be protected against the elements, and of course, food and medical supplies. A lot of questions about what action will be taken against those who've perpetrated this. Will someone feel criminal charges? Peter, that's your question. This is taking place inside Myanmar, which is now a democracy. Aung San Suu Kyi is a de facto leader, but Rakhine State is completely off limits. Now, the government there says that they are facing a situation where there's a lot of violence on the ground by Rohingya militants. They've blamed some of the violence on a group called the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army. It's a little-known group. They say they have links to global Islamic groups, and therefore they're having to use, the Myanmar authorities say, tremendous amount of force to try and break the back of this militancy. But in the process, as we are beginning to see, and from the testimony we're hearing, a lot of innocent people are suffering. We're just going to come over this way, walking very slowly through the mud, because there are some women here, refugees who've just arrived, and a local volunteer, a Muslim lady, is handing out, I'm not sure how much you can see, but she's distributing food, basically little bread buns. And just look at that scene. Children, so many children reaching out because they're hungry, because they haven't eaten. This is something we're beginning to see a lot of. A lot of humanitarian gestures by the local Bangladeshi community. This is a very poor country, a very poor part of the world, and the communities here are doing their best to step in, do whatever they can. But there are over 250,000 Rohingyas now in Bangladesh. There are more coming in. So this is, unfortunately and very sadly, simply a drop in the ocean. Let me tell you once again, I am in Bangladesh, very close to the Myanmar-Bangladesh border. Right across from me is the Rakhine State in Bangladesh. More and more refugees have been coming in every day. We can just show you, this is a group that's just entered Bangladesh. And just look at them walking along with these sacks, carrying their belongings, whatever they were able to salvage. Little children carrying those reed mats. Another man carrying vessels. A lot of them would have had to leave very, very quickly as their villages were attacked, fleeing violence, fleeing a very frightening situation. And they basically grabbed whatever it is they could. Look at their faces. They tell you the story of what they've had to endure. Escaping with their lives, many of them, very, very uncertain of the future. Once again, across the road, the children are just running because someone's brought some food, and they're fighting to try and get hold of some food. That's the situation here. Just a loaf of bread. But there are so many people here going hungry that it's not going to go very far. Somebody asking a question, Muniruddin, Aung San Suu Kyi, can't she control a military? You have to remember that for years she was in exile. Myanmar was a military dictatorship. Excuse the loud, we have a lot of traffic by the side. Myanmar was a military dictatorship, and there's some suggestion that it's very difficult for her to control her generals. Maybe that's why she's not able to do much. Once again, this is the BBC Facebook Live from Bangladesh, right across the border from Myanmar. We're trying to bring you the latest in a very tragic story. 250,000 Myanmar Rohingya refugees from Myanmar have come in here, and there are more coming in every day. In the next few days, we will try to bring you a lot more detail, a lot more personal stories. Do watch BBC News, log on to the website at bbcnews.com for the latest, a range of stories out there, heart-rending testimonies, and also news from across the border, from inside Myanmar, from a BBC colleague who's gained unprecedented access. Thank you very much for joining us on this Facebook Live. This is Sanjoy Majumdar signing off from Bangladesh.